September 12th, 1942. The South Atlantic, 600 miles off the coast of West Africa. German submarine U-156 torpedoes a British troopship. As the vessel sinks, Commander Werner Hartenstein surfaces to capture officers. Then he hears voices. Hundreds of voices. Hartenstein realizes what he's done. The ship was carrying over 1,800 Italian prisoners of war, Germany's allies, along with British crew, Polish guards, and civilian passengers. Over 2,000 people are now in the water. Hartenstein then makes an extraordinary decision. He radios for help to everyone, Allied and Axis alike. He broadcasts in plain English, "If any ship will assist the shipwrecked Laconia crew, I will not attack." For 4 days, German U-boats will attempt the largest submarine rescue operation in history. This is the Laconia Incident, the moment when showing mercy became impossible. RMS Laconia was a 20,000-ton Cunard White Star ocean liner, launched in 1921. At 600 feet long, she could carry 2,200 passengers in peacetime luxury. When war came in 1939, she was converted to a troopship, armed with deck guns, depth charges, and anti-submarine equipment. By September 1942, Laconia had been making runs between Britain and the Middle East, carrying troops and supplies. On August 12, 1942, she departed Suez for Cape Town, South Africa. There, she loaded an unusual cargo. Approximately 1,800 Italian prisoners of war captured in North Africa, along with 160 Polish soldiers serving as guards. She also carried 463 British officers and crew, 286 British Army personnel, and about 80 civilians, including women and children. Total aboard, approximately 2,732 people. On September 5, 1942, Laconia left Cape Town bound for Freetown, Sierra Leone, then onward to Britain. She sailed alone, no convoy, no escort. Her speed and defensive armament were considered sufficient protection. U-156 was a Type 9C submarine, one of Germany's largest U-boats, capable of long-range patrols. Her commander was Korvettenkapitan Werner Hartenstein, age 34, an experienced officer who joined the Navy in 1928. By September 1942, Hartenstein had been commanding U-156 for over a year. He'd sunk 18 ships. He was considered skilled and professional. He'd also been trained in the old maritime laws, the cruiser rules, which required attacking warships to assist survivors when possible. On September 12, 1942, U-156 was patrolling off West Africa, midway between Liberia and Ascension Island, when Hartenstein spotted Laconia through his periscope. At 8:07 p.m. on that same day, Hartenstein ordered his crew to battle stations. Laconia was armed and sailing in a war zone. Under international law, she was a legitimate target. No warning was required. At 10 p.m., U-156 surfaced and maneuvered into attack position. At 10:07 p.m., Hartenstein fired 2 torpedoes. Both struck Laconia on the starboard side. The first hit near the hold where Italian prisoners were confined. The explosion killed hundreds instantly. The second torpedo struck minutes later, ensuring the ship's fate. At 10:22 p.m., Laconia's radio operator transmitted that they were under attack by submarine. Captain Rudolf Sharp ordered the ship abandoned. Lifeboats were lowered, but Laconia was listing heavily. Only half the boats could be launched from the port side. Many passengers and prisoners jumped directly into the ocean. What happened next was chaotic and brutal. Some British crew members, panicked or following orders to prevent prisoner escape, refused to let Italian prisoners into lifeboats. Survivors later reported seeing Italians shot or having their hands struck with axes when they tried to climb aboard. The water filled with struggling men, then sharks arrived, attracted by blood and thrashing. Survivor accounts describe the horror, sharks attacking swimmers, pulling men under, creating panic that made rescue more difficult. Laconia sank bow first at 11:23 p.m., just over an hour after the first torpedo hit. U-156 surfaced shortly after, intending to capture senior officers for interrogation. Hartenstein expected to find a few dozen survivors in lifeboats. Instead, he found over 2,000 people in the water, crying for help in multiple languages. That's when he heard the Italian voices. Hartenstein was stunned. The ship had been carrying Italian prisoners, Germany's allies. He radioed to his superiors at 1:25 a.m., sunk by Hartenstein, British Laconia, unfortunately with 1,500 Italian POWs, 90 fished out so far. Request orders. But Hartenstein didn't wait for orders. He began rescue operations immediately. U-156's crew pulled survivors from the water. They distributed blankets, food, and water. They treated injuries. They packed men onto the submarine's deck, far beyond safe capacity. Within hours, the submarine had 193 survivors on board and was towing 4 lifeboats loaded with more. Hartenstein then did something extraordinary. At 6 a.m. on September 13th, he broadcast in plain English on international frequencies, "If any ship will assist the shipwrecked Laconia crew, I will not attack providing I am not being attacked by ship or air forces. I picked up 193 men, 4 degrees 53 south, 11 degrees 26 west. German submarine." He repeated the message twice. It was an unprecedented offer. A U-boat commander promising not to attack any rescue ships, Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, received Hartenstein's initial request and immediately ordered assistance. 7 U-boats from nearby patrols were diverted to the rescue site. 3 arrived, U-506 under Erich Würdemann, U-507 under Harro Schacht, and Italian submarine Commandante Capellini. Dönitz also contacted Vichy French authorities in West Africa. France, though under German occupation, still controlled colonies in Africa. 3 French ships were dispatched, the cruiser Gloire from Dakar, and 2 sloops, Annamite and Dumont d'Urville. For 3 days, the submarines continued rescue operations. They flew Red Cross flags from their periscopes. They broadcast their positions openly. They packed their decks with survivors. U-156 alone carried over 200 people on its hull, with another 200 in tow. The submarines moved slowly eastward toward the rendezvous point with French ships, maintaining radio contact, still broadcasting their rescue mission in the clear. British authorities received Hartenstein's messages. They redirected 2 merchant ships to assist. The operation was becoming an unprecedented moment of cooperation in the middle of the war. Then, on September 16th, 4 days after the sinking, everything changed. At 12:32 p.m. on September 16th, 1942, a U.S. Army Air Force's B-24 Liberator bomber from the 343rd Bombardment Squadron approached U-156. The pilot was Lieutenant James D. Harden, flying from Ascension Island. Ascension was a secret American base, its existence known only to authorized personnel. The island served as a refueling stop for aircraft crossing the Atlantic. Harden saw U-156 on the surface. The submarine's deck was packed with people, lifeboats were under tow, a large Red Cross flag was draped over the deck. Harden radioed his base for instructions. The senior officer on duty was Captain Robert C. Richardson III. Richardson ordered the attack. Whether Richardson knew about Hartenstein's rescue broadcast remains disputed. Some accounts claim he was unaware. Others suggest he knew but considered a surfaced U-boat a legitimate military target regardless of circumstances. At 12:32 p.m., Harden's B-24 began its bomb run. Hartenstein saw the aircraft approaching. He believed the Red Cross flag and his radio broadcast would protect them. He was wrong. The B-24 dropped bombs and depth charges. Several missed, but explosions in the water killed survivors in tow and destroyed 2 lifeboats. Shrapnel damaged U-156's hull. Hartenstein faced an impossible choice: stay on the surface and risk his submarine and crew being sunk, or dive and abandon the survivors he'd spent 4 days rescuing. He chose to save his submarine. He ordered survivors pushed overboard, even those on the deck. The lifeboats were cast off. U-156 crash-dived as the B-24 made a second attack run. The bomber pilot reported the submarine sunk. He was credited with a kill and later decorated. In reality, U-156 survived with minor damage but was forced to abandon the rescue. The other U-boats, hearing about the attack, also submerged and withdrew. The rescue mission was over. The following day, September 17th, Vichy French ships arrived at the rescue area. They collected survivors from lifeboats scattered across miles of ocean. Of Laconia's original 2,732 passengers and crew, 1,113 survived. That means 1,619 died, approximately 60% mortality. The vast majority of the dead, about 1,400, were Italian prisoners of war who'd been trapped below decks when the torpedoes struck or died in the water afterward. The attack on the rescue submarines enraged German command. On September 17th, 1942, Admiral Dönitz issued what became known as the Laconia Order. The directive, sent to all U-boat commanders, stated, "No attempt of any kind must be made at rescuing members of ships sunk. Rescue contradicts the most basic demands of warfare for the destruction of enemy ships and their crews." The order marked the end of traditional maritime conduct in submarine warfare. Before Laconia, U-boat crews often assisted survivors with food, water, directions to land, or by radioing their position to rescue ships. After Laconia, such actions were forbidden. The Laconia Order remained in effect for the rest of the war. It was later used as evidence against Dönitz at the Nuremberg trials. However, the prosecution's case collapsed when American Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz testified that the US Navy had practiced unrestricted submarine warfare in the Pacific since December 7, 1941, doing exactly what the Laconia Order prescribed. Dönitz was convicted of other charges, but not for the Laconia Order itself. Werner Hartenstein continued commanding U-156 for 6 more months. On March 8, 1943, U-156 was sunk in the Caribbean by American aircraft. Hartenstein and his entire crew were killed. He was 35 years old. The B-24 pilot, Lieutenant James D. Harden, was never charged with any wrongdoing. His actions were considered legitimate under the rules of war, attacking an enemy submarine in a combat zone. The Laconia Incident shows what happens when human decency collides with the reality of war. Werner Hartenstein sank the Laconia, then tried to save the people aboard. He broadcast openly, flew the Red Cross and stayed on the surface for days, fully exposed, because his conscience told him to help. It was compassionate, but militarily reckless. The American bomber pilot followed his orders. He saw an enemy submarine and attacked. Maybe he should have recognized the rescue effort. Maybe he couldn't. In war, decisions are made fast and often with incomplete information. Laconia proved that submarine warfare and old naval traditions couldn't coexist. Once a surfaced U-boat was attacked during a rescue, mercy became a liability. Afterward, submarines stopped assisting survivors altogether. The incident wasn't about heroes or villains. It was about people doing what they thought was right under impossible circumstances, where good intentions didn't prevent tragedy.